Call to the meeting to order. If you could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. We have 3 board members present, and Ms. Young and Ms. Shumway are joining us via Zoom, and they are both in attendance. Would anyone like to address the board this evening? No one. We'll move to item 5, which are reports, and our first report will be from Dr. Dorner.
Gretchen, we can't hear you.
I turned it off while I was pausing. Board Member Shumway, thanks for telling me. President Lucero, members of the board, I just was going to defer my COVID comments to the conversation on the last item of the agenda, 30. But I will talk about enrollment briefly and just say that we continue to have positive numbers. We watch the enrollment at every campus daily. We're adding teachers at Desert Willow, Wallapai, Manzanita. We're looking at Surbat and watching the secondary schools closely. So we continue to enroll students and have not had as many withdrawals. So that is all positives. And had a chance to get out to quite a few schools, and there's a very positive yet tired staff. The start of the year has been tremendously busy with all the additional work that comes along with the pandemic that forges ahead. But our staff is present, our students are present, and things are going well.
Thanks, Dr. Dorner. Any questions for Dr. Dorner and her report? We will move to our board reports. We have one report from Mr. Jacks, ASBA updates.
We have the ASBA Mojave County meeting coming up on September 29th of this year. And it was going to be hosted by Wade J-Ted, the Culinary Arts facility in Havasu. But as of yesterday, we got the message from ASBA that given the situation that we're in right now, they're going to go to a virtual meeting this year. So it'll be virtual. Registration will be free, and anybody that is an ASBA member is encouraged to attend. That's it.
Thanks, Mr. Jacks. Any questions? And
September 29th.
we have Mr. Catron with a facilities report.
All right, Mr. President, members of the board, quick mid-state update. Progress, everything is tracking along well. We're looking like we're going to be completed early next calendar year, so just a few more months. Las Anita is set to get a new chiller over our fall break, so we shuffled that around to make sure they're taken care of. We've had some chiller issues over the past few weeks. Solar panels are all placed at Kingman High, Las Anita, Surbat, and Wallapai. So we're continuing with all of our solar installs. So some sites are looking like they're completed, but we still have electrical work to do. And then our bipolar ionization air purification is up at all sites right now. It's all actively running and purifying sites. So we have clean air for all the students return.
Thank you. Any questions for Devin? No questions. Thank you. We will move to item 6, which is the approval of the routine orders of business. And I'd like to make a couple changes with the board's approval. We will remove Darren Meyer from Black Mountain. He's listed under item C, approved personal hire ratification. So we'll take him off of the consent agenda. And then just a wording change on number J, which says consideration and possible action to appoint Mr. Jacks to represent KUSD as the district delegate to ASBA. We'll take off consideration and possible action and just leave it as appoint Mr. Jacks. So that's item J.
I'll make a motion to make this
motion with the with the changes.
So we have a motion
I'll second it.
and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item 7, approve the 21-22 district representatives who will participate in special education, individual education plans. Dr. Dorner?
President, members of the board, these are the representatives who will sit as part of the IEP team and represent the district. Whether there's an annual IEP meeting or a met committee meeting concerning our students with special education needs.
Any questions or a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item 8, books on display for the required 60 days beginning June 8th, 2021.
Mr. President, members of the board, this book being on display for 60 days has fulfilled that requirement. It supports our initiative to provide a guaranteed curriculum at all grade levels. I'm asking for approval.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Was that an oppose? Was that Mrs. Young?
I did not oppose, no.
Oh,
I
okay.
said aye.
Aye. Ms. Shumway was an aye also?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Item 9, Mind Up curriculum to be on display for the required 60 days beginning June 8th, 2021.
Mr. President, members of the board, this curriculum has been on display with some input that we spoke about at our last board meeting. But this supports our priority of staff and student well-being. We're asking for your approval tonight.
I'll make the motion to approve.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Jacks. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item 10, Freckle, an online Renaissance curriculum program to be on display for the required 60 days beginning June 8th, 2021.
Mr. President, members of the board, this is our priority with equitable access for learning. This supports that. It's been on display for 60 days. We're asking for approval.
Thank you.
I'll make that motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item 11, Math Space, an online program to be on display for the required 60 days beginning June 8th, 2021.
Mr. President, members of the board, this supports our initiative to engage all students as invested participants in the school and community by developing the whole child through research-based instruction. This math space has been on display. We're asking for approval.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item 12 is the last book on display for the required 60 days beginning June 8th, 2021.
Mr. President, members of the board, this supports our initiative to provide guaranteed curriculum at all grade levels in our core subjects. This book has been on display for the required 60 days with no outside input. We're asking for approval.
And the book is Earth Science, Geology, Environment, and the Universe.
Correct.
Make a motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item 13 is the first reading of several policies from the ASBA Policy Service Advisory. So these were the policies that STAR sent to us a couple weeks ago. Does anyone have any questions for the staff or Mrs. Woolsey. She's well versed in all of them. This is
No,
just no questions. This is discussion only, so these will come for a vote at the next board meeting.
I do have.
no questions.
Okay. Miss Weiser has a question.
I know there.
697.
Hold, Miss Weiser has a question first.
I think she's probably was unmuted. For number 687, staff personal security and safety. We know that it's talking about House Bill 2898 enacting a statute that prohibits school districts and charter schools from requiring face masks for students and staff during school hours and on school property. We also know that there's been at least 3 districts in the valley that have gone ahead, the board has gone ahead and required the masks anyway. It also reads further on, respectfully, that regulations which may be revised, deleted by the superintendent and communicated to the governing board. So I'm curious about what leeway you may have in this, Dr. Dorner. I don't know that you can answer me tonight, obviously, but I wanted to bring this up. Because our numbers are going up because of the Delta variant, where do we hit a point, and we'll be discussing more of it then, but that attributes to this policy your ability to be able to say, look, we either require masks or we shut the school.
What page? Do you have a page number by chance or no? On the bottom?
No,
No?
just number
Okay.
687. It's like 3 or 4, 5.
That's okay. Sorry.
You know what I'm saying? This it binds your hands, it binds our hands, and yet can we still override some of that? You know what I mean?
Because I don't think it binds my hands or yours. The interesting thing about some of these advisory notices is that they're about policies that we may or may not have adopted already. For example, we don't have that particular policy, but when we do get to board agenda item 30, as a local governing board, you can make decisions about KUSD policies and directives for procedures.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Weiser. Any other questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay, Ms. Shumway?
So we have policy advisory number 697, policy IJ, instructional resource and materials. And then the following 698, textbook supplementary materials. It's acknowledging that textbooks may not be a physical copy anymore, and it wants to include digital content. So does that mean that all digital content used in the classroom has to be board approved?
I can answer that.
Ms. Woolsey?
So,
Yes.
yes. Oh, yes, it's on. Yes, so we have always, from the beginning, printed off what the program is and all of its content, and we put it in a 3-ring binder and we put it on display. So we've always done that.
No, I'm talking about something interesting that I might have found at Nat Geo or at National Museum's website of a virtual tour. Would I be able to use that as a classroom teacher for my classroom without it being board approved if all digital content becomes textbook material?
You would have to get it approved. All supporting anything that supports the curriculum, the standards that is being used in a public school classroom has to be approved.
And that's because of a policy that we adopted before?
Correct.
And what is our leeway in revisiting that policy? Because I guarantee you it's not happening, nor should it.
I don't know what the procedure is, but I can find out for you and I can get back to you.
I think
Okay.
we just need to put it on a agenda as an
Put it
agenda
on the
item
agenda.
and have a first reading and then action.
Yes, please.
Okay,
Okay, so we will, Star, can you make note of that? You can contact Ms. Shumway for the wording. Okay, thank you. Any other questions regarding the policies? Okay, we will move on to item 14. Inform governing board of changes to ACA-R Title IX sexual harassment and ACA-E sexual harassment complaint form. Information only.
So, Mr. President and members of the board, as a matter of information, we will be updating governing board regulation ACAA-R Title IX sexual harassment to reflect that Ms. Stacy Mayo, parent liaison and discipline hearings officer, will serve as the district's Title IX coordinator for the 2021-22 fiscal year. In addition, we will be updating Governing Board Exhibit ACA-E Sexual Harassment Complaint Form with a new Title IX Formal Complaint Form, which is a template reviewed by attorneys and provided by the district or provided to the district following a training hosted by the trust. The action item falls under the communication and collaboration priority and supports the initiative to coordinate systems of aligned messages designed to promote procedural resource situational impact information.
Thank you, Angela. Any questions? That's for information only. No questions. Item 15, approve recommendation for district administration to apply, in quote, school business leave at its discretion to employee compensation when regularly scheduled work time is missed. At administration's request for the employee to get tested for COVID-19 if exposed while at work.
Mr. President and members of the board, at its public meeting on March 16, 2020, the governing board approved the recommendation for district administration to apply school business/professional leave at its discretion to employee compensation when regularly scheduled work time is missed at administration's request as a result of school or district closures. With the new fiscal year, we are again seeking approval to apply school business leave for COVID testing in accordance with our contact tracing protocols. The application of school business will be limited to certain circumstances and timeframes and will be applied with consistency across the district. This action item falls under staff and student well-being priority.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item 16 is to entertain a possible motion to move into executive session regarding the request to be released from fiscal 21-22 employment contracts by Andrew McIntosh, Brianna Daly, and Sari Tabbert. So do I have a motion to move into executive session?
So moved.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Any opposed? Okay, we will move into executive session and be back shortly. I don't know if they have that figured out or not. our regular session. And we are on item number 18, which is possible action on request to be released from fiscal year 21-22 employment contract by Andrew McIntosh. And I will make a motion to deny the request for Mr. McIntosh's resignation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item 19 is possible action on request to be released from fiscal year 21-22 employment contract by Brianna Daly. I have a motion to deny the resignation of Brianna Daly and recommend that administration work with Ms. Daly on a possible future resignation date and transition plan that would work in the best interest of the district and the employee. So I have a motion and a second. Ms. Marsha, is that okay? Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Did we get the onlines? I didn't hear.
Yeah, yes.
Yes. Okay. A motion passes 5-0. Item 20, possible action on request to be released from fiscal year 21-22 employment contract by Mrs. Sari Tabert. And I have a motion to accept that the board accept the resignation of Sari Tabert effective August 19th and waive any liquidated damages.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item 21, possible motion to move into executive session regarding the recommendation to ratify the termination of employment of Suzanne Kidder. Do we need to go into executive session? Would any board member like to go into executive session, or we can do the motion in our regular session? So do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
So we have a motion to ratify the termination of employment of Suzanne Kidder. Do we have a second?
I'm not comfortable because I haven't read enough about her. I didn't see that information.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Did you have a question, Ms. Weiser?
What was her position? Okay.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. We do not need item 22. Item 23, possible action on a recommendation. Oh, sorry. We don't need 23. 24, governing board to discuss, may consider action to approve ASBA political agenda. Mr. Jacks is going to do this one.
The proposed 2022 political agenda is actually kind of a takeoff of the 2021 political agenda with a few markups on it. Some that include funding distant learning at 100%, protecting voters' intent to fund K-12 education and oppose legislation that attempts to supplant or divert additional voter approved fund streams such as Prop 301 and Prop 208. That has other things. Exceptional student services receive adequate funding for the actual cost of their services. Oppose any legislation that has this intent to lessen or curtail the legal authority of local school boards, including their authority to approve or present curriculum. Rethink and redefine the role and purpose of standardized testing and develop meaningful assessments. Those were some of the markups. I recommend that we approve the 2022 draft political agenda.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
So we have a motion by Mr. Jacks. We have a second.
Can you read that part again.
You want it? You can make a second, then we can do discussion.
Okay,
Is that
second.
okay? So we have a motion and a second. Now we'll have discussion. Ms. Weiser.
Just that part at the beginning about the supplanting income. What was that actually saying again?
Oh, about protect voters' intent in funding K-12 education
Okay,
and oppose legislation that attempts to supplant or divert additional voter-approved funding streams such as Prop 301 or Prop 208.
okay, thank you. I misunderstood when you read it the first time.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Jacks. Item 25, approve Kingman High School Culinary Program and Student Store to continue using the ASPIN cooperative contract for food and supply purchases.
Mr. President, members of the board, this is related to our vision of building school structures that lead to engaging, meaningful, and relevant learning opportunities. The Kingman High School Culinary Program and its student store would like to continue using Aspen for procuring food and supplies at a discounted price. Approval here allows clubs to order food and supplies, bread and baked goods, and milk and dairy products from Shamrock Foods and Wholesome Bakery via the Aspen contract. They pay an annual maintenance fee, which will be $76 for the culinary program and $116 for the student store in this year.
Motion to approve.
No, second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Approve vehicle use agreement between Hackberry School District and KUSD for the 21-22 school year.
Mr. President, members of the board, this agreement allows Hackberry School District to operate a district bus for the transportation of their students. This fits into the district's communication and collaboration strategy, as many of these students will ultimately be part of Kingman Unified School District at one point in their educational careers. You have a list of guidelines that are to be followed. If you'd like me to state them for the record, I can. Otherwise, you can ask me any questions.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Questions for Mr. Sherman? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item 27, approve Title IX stipend of $5,100 for the 21-22 school year.
Mr. President, members of the board, in August 2020, as we mentioned earlier in this meeting, significant changes were made to Title IX, the 1972 amendment that prohibits sex discrimination. The final rule defines sexual harassment and established detailed procedures for how districts subject to Title IX because of their federal funding must respond to allegations of sexual harassment and to formal complaints filed. Compliance focuses on strictly defined timelines, extensive notification, and a high level of documentation. As part of the district's commitment to monitor school safety for staff and students, administration proposes sharing the responsibility of Title IX compliance by designating the parent liaison and discipline hearings officer as the Title IX coordinator, which carries with it the responsibility of ensuring the district's compliance with all of the new regulations. As part of that, we want to offer this position a $5,100 stipend for the entire year, and so we're asking for approval on that.
I'll make a motion to approve the Title IX stipend of $5,100.
We have a motion
I'll second.
and a second. Any discussion?
I'm curious if the liaison is going to be overloaded if we keep adding things to her position.
Board Member Weiser, we did meet with our parent liaison, and it fits under the realm of some of the investigative duties that she does. As part of the Title IX team, there are multiple members, so she doesn't bear the entire weight on her own. Mrs. Woolsey has roles, Mrs. Moreski has roles, I have roles, so this is just one piece of it, and she is very comfortable with adding it.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Item 28, approve reclassification of the Special Education Department's Administrative Assistant to Coordinator.
Mr. President, members of the board, as part of the district's commitment to recruit and retain highly effective staff, a recent job audit revealed the essential functions of the SPED admin assistant position have been elevated and are commensurate with other classified coordinator positions within the district. Do you want me to get into the details of that? Essentially, we looked over this job classification, found that the responsibilities were higher and more broad, and so that's why we're looking at this, moving them into a coordinator.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item 29, approve IGA by and between waive number 50 and KUSD provision of CTE courses at satellite locations.
Mr. President, members of the board, we annually approve an IGA with Superintendent West and the WAVE board. And so this is just a housekeeping item. Annually, we have read the IGA and the work that we do with the WAVE. JTED, as you know, is tremendous to our high school program, so we recommend continuation.
Thank you, Dr. Dorn. Do we have a motion?
Sorry. I'm going to repeat that just a little bit because my mic wasn't on. It's
Okay.
an annual housekeeping item. We love our JTED WAVE. We work with Superintendent West, and we recommend continuing our CTE programs at the high school level in conjunction with WAVE.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item 30, review and possible action on policy and procedures in keeping schools open guide for the 21-22 school year.
Mr. President,
Dr.
members of the board, included in your packet is a copy of the amended or modified Return to Learn Guide, now referred to as the Keeping Schools Open Guide, because it is our intention and desire to have our students present for live instruction, if at all possible. So at this time, I would entertain questions and conversations with the board pertaining to our procedures related to COVID, staff and student well-being and safety.
Do we have questions? Ms. Weiser?
At what point do we decide we have to close a school or send kids home?
Well, I emailed, I did invite a representative upon your request from the health department, and unfortunately, they were not able to have a person present, but I did email questions, and I have had conversations with Ms. Moreski in the health department and with Denise Burley via email. And I did ask a couple of those questions, anticipating you might want answers. As far as what constitutes the point at which schools may be closed, the response is that it depends on several factors. However, we should facilitate early investigation of suspected outbreaks and basically look at contact tracing and who might be contracting the virus from whom. And then, and I quote, any decision regarding a change in operational status will be made in conjunction and coordination with school leadership. So and this is the written correspondence. In our verbal correspondence, we're told when you cannot properly staff a school or keep a school open because of lack of staffing is the time that we should get together and have that conversation. For example, last year when CERBAT had a high number of staff members who were out during that initial surge, and we did not have substitute teachers, we did make, I think it was around Thanksgiving time, the decision to close the school for a week. It can be a classroom, it can be a part of a school, or it can be a whole school, but we make the decision in conjunction with leadership and the health department. So I can't give you a specific number.
No, that's exactly what
Okay.
I was hoping I would hear, that kind of plan. You sent me the numbers.
And I have them as of today as well, and they're posted on the website. Star, our board secretary, has been refreshing them regularly.
Okay, and so it's talking about 4 employees at Kingman High School.
Mhm.
Are
They're
they-
they're down to 3 currently.
Okay. Okay, so, and these aren't necessarily teachers, it's just the whole
Not
school.
necessarily teachers.
Right.
Mr. Ward had, I think, a teacher and a couple of paraprofessionals.
Okay, and 8 students, that's not very many for how many are in the,
Right.
School.
Currently, Kingman High has 12 positive cases. And so if you, as a school district, we're at less than 1% of our students and less than 1% of our staff. But then you also might want to look at individual schools as far as percentages. So with 1,000 kids on campus and 12 cases, that's about a 1%.
Any other questions or comments for Dr. Dorner?
Yes, I have some.
Yes, Ms. Shumway.
So before, the requirement for saying you have to quarantine because you came into contact with the positive was like this whole criteria, right? You were without a mask, without social distancing for 15 minutes.
Right.
Now that nobody wears a mask, what is that criteria?
It's basically the same, Board Member Shumway. The principals see who was in the definition of close contact. They talk to the positive student and the classroom teacher, and then they follow the same quarantine procedure that we did last year. So in this room right now, if I ended up positive tomorrow and I was a student and this was a classroom, Jerry Woolsey, who's sitting within the 6 feet of me, and we've been like this for more than 15 minutes, she would be called to the office. Her parents would be contacted. The one difference, and we're following the script of the health department on this, that if Woolsey, Assistant Superintendent Woolsey, was fully vaccinated or had been positive within the last 90 days, then she does not need to quarantine. And so that added conversation is in the mix this year. And then we follow the 10 days, we follow the 10 days. And then we do follow the recommendation of the health department that you can test if you're asymptomatic, no symptoms, you're not medicated, you can test on day 6 or 7. And if you're negative and continue to be asymptomatic, you can return on day 8. That's the shortened quarantine clause.
So your spreadsheet shows the number of positives at 29 in the district, but it doesn't show how many are out for quarantine.
Correct.
Do you have that number?
Yeah, the principals are keeping track of that number as well, but we're not posting that so that there's not confusion between positive and quarantine. Quarantine's an attempt to keep negative students negative, and if they do end up being positive, not having them on campus. So we can give you any data you want. I don't have it in front of me, but Star can email it. We can gather it from the principals.
Well, the only reason it matters is because those students are not receiving direct instruction, and they don't have a way to receive direct instruction for 10 days. So while the positive cases matter, so do the quarantine for an education system.
Absolutely.
So I think we should maybe there could be another tab
Okay,
on this
we can
shared
definitely,
document.
we can add that.
So then the other question, I think, on everyone's minds is, what are we doing as a responsible board for the community to keep it safe? Are we social distancing? Do we have half classrooms, or are we packed with 25, 30 kids?
I'm watching the classroom numbers daily with the principals. Like I said at the beginning of the meeting, as soon as we are slightly above those ratios, we're posting positions for the principals. There are some cases that we need to work with at the secondary level, in particular, high school, definitely more than middle school, where scheduling needs to be worked on. I can share 2 data sheets with you that shows every single teacher and every single period and how many kiddos they have in their classes, especially at the secondary level. I have it color coded with who's 5 or more below the 32 ratio. And there are many, many classes at the secondary level that are 5 or more below. And we also have some teachers that are above the 32 ratio, not nearly as many, a fraction of what's below. And I'm working with the secondary principals to balance those schedules. We've bought out a couple preps in some situations to reduce them in the meantime, but we're actually, and I think, board, did I share the student number sheets with you? I believe I did. I will check, but Jen, it shows you every school, the grade level, the average number, and where we're sitting right now.
I think you did last semester, last school year. I just have to go back into my email. I probably still have access if that's
I'll
what you're
reshare
referring
it.
to.
Yeah, I'll reshare it right after the meeting, just in case.
So would be based on our square footage of classrooms and 24 being the cap of our student to teacher ratio. Would we still consider that social distancing?
No, we've never been able to socially distance at that 3 feet per students. You know, even when you read the CDC guidelines, it does talk about social distance whenever possible. I know teachers are doing their best with their principals to have their desks not clustered. When I've been out visiting the schools, you see the desks spaced out in the room as much as possible, but I can't tell you that all the classes are 3 feet between kiddos, not at all.
So that's an X on that check mark. So we can't social distance, and we're not requiring masks. So, and Mojave County has a 30% vaccination rate. So the answer is we're not doing a darn thing to protect our schools and our community from this pandemic. So is there anything this board can do to protect our students and our community from this pandemic?
I mean, I would disagree with that statement. We aren't doing a darn thing. I've been asked by community members, what does the district do? And I direct them to our Keeping Schools Open guide. That is what our board has adopted, and we're trying to follow that as close as possible to keep our schools open and to keep our staff and students safe.
So yes, we're doing screening. Are we still doing screening every day?
Yes.
100%?
I'm looking over at the principals. They're all putting a thumbs up right now.
And we still have our COVID custodians?
Yes.
100%?
Yes. Devin
And
Patron just finished filling them last Thursday. We had a few openings, all but one, he said.
And we still have personal protective equipment, including PPE gloves, face masks, sneeze guards, etc. This is in our return to learn guide.
Yes.
So where are the sneeze guards?
I was going to ask the question. We do try to social distance in some. When I visited schools last week, we did. I mean, there were desks that were apart. We attempt to do it as much as we can. We're just limited.
Right. The sneeze guards, I'm going to look at the principals again. They're on the counters. They're available for, we're not using dibbles anymore, but if there's, there are sneeze guards available if there's like head-to-head small group testing. Principals, Mr. Arvey? We have them in the cafeteria. So they are available, and we have told principals and teachers if they ever feel like they need something that isn't there to just ask. We have the ESSER money. We've purchased everything that was requested last year. If there are continued requests, we will fulfill those requests without hesitation.
I think the school district is doing an exceptionally good job with the protocols that are in place for back to school learning. And I think the results that we're seeing out of that are pretty good when you look at we're at the 1% level for positivity rates for students or staff. If that number starts changing or climbing, I have no doubt whatsoever that our district staff and our schools and principals will bring that to everybody's attention immediately. And then maybe we have to look at something that needs to change. But right now, it seems that we're doing a good job of maintaining a very difficult situation.
It is thank you. It is a difficult situation, and there are daily challenges. Our principals are exhausted because it takes a lot of time and energy to pay attention to make sure the COVID custodians boots are on the ground and things are being disinfected, that the temperature scans are occurring with fidelity. I can't say 100% to anything, Board Member Shumway. I wouldn't be completely honest if we didn't say that we have to constantly be mindful and on the lookout for areas where the fidelity starts to slip. But they're putting in the time and energy, and it is rising. And I can't say that we won't have to reconvene at some point and talk about other changes.
And that's why I was asking the question prior to the board meeting about being able to talk to the health, and I'm curious. So asking the question so that we were ready this month if it really starts to spike in the schools.
Mhm.
But I'm curious about the questions and the answers you got from the health department.
Okay. And there's not too much, but you know, we wanted to know if the health department was continuing to track, because it felt a little bit of a slip at the end of last year, like when we didn't seem to be communicating or collaborating on the tracking as much. So I wanted to know, are we still submitting the positive student forms when cases are reported to schools? Because what was happening was we would fill out an entire form on a staff or a student. Then the health department would compare that to the positivity forms they were getting from the labs. And then they would do contact tracing from their end, and we would do contact tracing from ours, and then coordinate to make sure that we were fully covered. And the answer was yes, definitely continue to turn in those forms. And then they told us that they often get the forms from us before they get them from the lab. So we're almost of more help to them than they can be to us sometimes. Do we need to submit positive staff forms? It's the same thing. Yes, we're contact tracing very carefully there. Has anything changed with the close contact radius and tracking that? And she's responded no, that we're still tracking that close contact radius. I already mentioned the outbreak and then the getting together with the health department and the site leadership to make those decisions. Do we need to send exposure and close contact letters home again this year? The answer was yeah. It's recommended that close contacts be notified in quarantine. However, the decision to notify close contacts is determined by each school district. And so even some school districts are not tracking or contact tracing or making quarantines. They said it's up to us, but we're continuing that. I wrote that I understand AZDHS and CDC are recommending all staff and students wear masks. I understand the governor has written letters to some districts and passed legislation stating that schools cannot mandate masks and should not use quarantine, because that was included in that recommendation. I know local school boards have the authority to make local decisions. What would your recommendation to the school board be? We have a meeting August 10th. The answer was the public health supports recommendations, but recognizes this is not supported by the governor. Our goal is to work with schools and keep children engaged through in-person learning. That was the response to that question.
So no response.
No response, exactly. I said, you know, with 7,000 students, 900 employees, our decisions impact a good portion of the community, and that we look forward to and want to work with the health department in the best interest in the safety of our school community. So I'm very, it's up to local boards, it's up to local principals, it's up to us, and that there were no real strong recommendations made.
I have a question.
Yes.
Gretchen, who is responsible for contact tracing at each school?
The principal or his or her designee. So principals, if it's you, raise your hand. All but two are going up. And if it's a designee, meaning a vice principal or your health attendant, and the rest of the hands. So it's either a principal and the combination of the principal and and the health attendant, or a vice principal and a health attendant as a designee.
So because we don't have actual numbers of quarantine students, how many are we, since you have many of them there, about how many students are having to quarantine with one positive?
It's pretty low at the elementary level. I would say 1 to 3, 5 on the high end. Would that be accurate, principals? And then at the secondary level, depending on the class, you could take, because a student moves through 6 classes, as you know, you have to take the total of the contacts in that 6th class. And I've seen anywhere between 5 and 15.
Per student?
Per positive, yes. Some, well, we could do an average. Some have a handful and some would have more. So on a low end, a few, and on a high end, 15. We did have one situation where there were 20, but at the secondary level, the principals are finding there are some vaccinated high school students, which is good. And the other thing that we're doing is working with the health department to have a vaccination site at the high schools on the 23rd with a parent present. A lot of the parents had indicated, I know Mr. Taylor spoke to a couple of the parents who said, we've been meaning, to get our student vaccinated, but we haven't gotten to it. And so we are going to make that opportunity available to those that want to make that choice at the high school level.
So that's 105 students, just based on the 21 students,
Sure.
and being conservative in that we're only saying 5 students have to quarantine. That's 105 students that's more than 1% of our population. So then how are we verifying vaccination, full vaccination? Are we taking their word for it, or are we requiring proof?
We are not requiring proof at this time. We did receive information yesterday. We're working through the legalities of what you can and cannot ask as far as FERPA. Ms. Moreski did find out that we can ask staff when we're talking about quarantines there. And then we're seeking information on if we can ask for that proof of vaccination on students.
Is there a reason that we ask for proof of, let's say, chickenpox vaccine and not this?
There are some vaccinations that are mandated. This is not
Yet.
but it's not right now, Board Member Shumway, and we have to follow the law right now.
So are we considering going back to a mask mandate?
We're discussing our guide right now, so that hasn't been recommended yet.
Do we need a motion?
I'm hoping that we're going to be ready for that. Because the numbers don't show the need at the moment. But if we have a big spike, and especially how many subs do we have and how many teachers might go out, that this is all fluid. So to be ready for that, we would have another meeting, right?
Any parent and any student can choose to wear a mask at any time.
Right. No, I mean, but if we needed to go further than that, if we had a drastic situation that developed, we would be revisiting all of this.
Correct.
Yeah.
Charlie?
Yes, Jen.
Beth, I just wanted to ask, 105 students, what number are you looking for? What number are you looking for to say, okay, now we need to pull the trigger?
I don't-
105.
I don't have a number. I don't have a number in mind. Right now, the number I look at, I look at what the information they provide us with. And right now the number is under 1% of COVID cases in the district.
And
Thanks, Charlie. But I was actually asking Beth.
That's all.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jen.
That's all I was looking at.
So to me, positive and quarantine, they're the same in my mind, because they are losing out on significant direct instruction. It's one thing to say, okay, we have to do our part in public health, right? but ultimately we are tasked with educating the town. And if we were to say the students sitting in our classroom, if we were to go through those steps, social distancing, masking, all those things, if they were wearing a mask, then we could say they weren't without a mask, they weren't social distancing, sure, but they were wearing a mask. Therefore, they don't have to quarantine.
No, they still have to quarantine. It doesn't have to do with mask or not.
I thought that was the case if they were without a mask and were not social distance last
No.
year.
Even with a mask, they're quarantined.
That seems different than last year.
No,
That's the way I remember it.
It's the same.
principals. Yeah, it's the same.
Okay, so what were masks doing? How did masks play a part in that process
They didn't.
before?
They didn't.
Interesting. Other than we had pretty low numbers, even though our community was spiking. I mean, that's where I think what we do, and the principals and the teachers and the custodians, that is where we shined last year.
Right.
Because our numbers were off the charts and our school numbers were not. So that is where we shine. I'm concerned that the one thing different from last year to this year is masks. And I think only time will tell. The problem is time's going to tell in student education, student health, and community health. So, I mean, we can just sit here and say, okay, I guess we're gonna see, and somebody's gonna decide what number is a bad number, and then we'll do something about it, or we can, look at past trends.
Right.
I have a question.
And I don't disagree. Everybody in this room, it's a really difficult thing. I would like to see people making a personal choice, for safety and social distancing and sanitizing and all the things that should keep them individually safe and then kind of helps us as a community. It's not easy. But I think when we talk about wanting to have kids in school, I'm unpacking my thinking right now, but we lost more kids while we were masked that were not. We are enrolling kids on a daily basis that sat last year out, and I mean by the dozens, that are now in school getting that direct instruction. And so I don't want to put a number on it or put a number on safety or say if we get to this level, suddenly I care about safety and I don't at that level. But we want our kids in school. We want our enrollment there. We want our kids in direct instruction, and we want to find a way that keeps them there and keeps them safe, if that makes sense. And I would like those who feel inclined to have masks on and make that personal choice and make them available. But I don't want our community at war again, because that didn't work either.
I have a question.
Yeah, Mrs. Young, go ahead.
How much have the cases spiked since we did away with the mask mandate?
I can't tell you, because it was the last quarter where things were really dropping before the Delta entered. So we had very minimal positivity in that last month of May, to the point where we kind of were not even refreshing our site because the cases weren't coming in. And so that's a really difficult question to answer. This is almost like a second or a new pandemic. It's not the same one we went through originally.
Okay. I really, I think you guys have done a wonderful job. I want to thank you because I know it's been a great challenge on you and the staff. And I believe that, our 1% is far better than many districts in the nation.
Thank you. I don't think we need a motion.
Is it keeping schools open, though?
Well, we don't need a motion, right? Unless someone wants to make one. We already have the guide, and I don't think it's.
There were
Would you like
changes
'em?
to the guide where they're not.
What was that, Jen?
Yeah, she's right. It's a modified guide if you want to approve.
Oh, okay.
And if you will see on page, because this is the conversation that we're in right now. Sorry, I apologize. I should have flagged it. If you find it before me, masks.
Page 14.
KUSD does not currently mandate masks because that was the board decision last spring. However, masks are strongly encouraged for unvaccinated staff or students following CDC guidelines and recommendations. As of July 28th, Dr. Chris, director of AZDHS, said everyone in K-12 setting, teachers, staff, and students should wear a mask. This statement was made based on the most recent CDC recommendation that people in areas of high transmission resume wearing masks indoors. The current debate surrounding mandated masks is ongoing and continues to be a local board decision until otherwise notified. So we do have that strong encouragement. I am going to post a letter to the community that says as such tomorrow. So it's not, it's not brushed off in the guide. It just recognizes that we currently do not have the mandate mask. However, it is strongly encouraged.
What does it look like in the school for adults to be showing their support by also wearing masks to those students that might be on the fence, like, oh, my parents tell me I should, but I take it off and shove it in my pocket when I get to school because I don't want to be the one standing out. What does it look like for peer pressure for the adults to be the ones to say, hey, it's okay to do, look, I'm doing it? What does that look like?
Is that to me?
I don't know.
Yes.
So you're suggesting that if our adults wear them, then that would promote, encourage the students to wear them? When you say,
Well,
what
we
does
know
that
that's
look
the
like?
case.
I'm not sure what that question means.
I'm saying when you'd walk into a school, if we were having an assembly, how many adults wearing masks would I see?
Very few. Maybe one or two or three, 5 at the high end on the campus with the most.
Do you, Ms. Weiser?
I'm going to make a motion to approve the modified Keeping Schools Open guide.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? No further discussion? All those in favor of Ms. Weiser's motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-1. Item 31 is to approve the listed donations. And there are several of them.
Make a motion to approve the donations with our heartfelt gratitude.
Second that motion.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion and a second by Ms. Weiser. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you.